3 straight wins entering the Olympic break. You starting to believe again or what? What's the deal here?
You saw the tweets. Parade's back on, buddy. Let's go. But again, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes, right? And again, I'm not a betting man, but I would bet that going into this Olympic break, that the Leafs would give us some hope. I probably would put some money on that for sure.
So can you do like a percentage deal here? I mean, everyone knows what the points that you usually need to get into the playoffs. This year seems kind of unique with that jam-packed Atlantic division, but like they were cooked, and I mean unanimously cooked by everyone who thought about the Maple Leafs 3 games ago. 3 games against the Flames, the Vancouver Canucks, and the Oilers, and all of a sudden, like, are you thinking 50-50, or is this like more like a 15% chance kind of thing that the Leafs get in?
Well, just going back on history sort of rhyming, I think it's going to come down to the wire, right? And ultimately with this group, you look at the success they had last year, right? It started off with the defense and Tanev and Carlo and all these guys playing at a high level. And majority of the issues this year have been injuries, right? So that now, and I think the number one thing mostly probably was the goaltending, right? You had a 1A, 1B situation between Stolarz and Wall, and that just hasn't been the case, right? The last couple of weeks, you finally started getting them there. It took them a little bit of time to get their rhythm in. But for me now, if you get that goaltending that you got from Stolarz and Wall these last couple of games, like they're going to have a chance. They're going to have a chance, right? And you take a look at the math yesterday. I was sitting there last night watching. I'm like, I hope Boston doesn't score in overtime here. 6 points is doable. 7 points is almost impossible. But you sort of look at the standings here, and it's not necessarily about collecting the points. It's you look at their January. A lot of these games are against non-divisional opponents, non-conference opponents. It's not just the point. It's trying to jump 3 or 4 teams. So is it impossible? No, I think it's going to be difficult. But again, with this group, I think it's a little bit too early to be counting them out like Leaf Nation is.
Yeah, you're right. And the crippling part about last night was that Florida was up in that game, 2 goals, Middlestat ties it, then they win in the shootout. It's like, okay, give up that point. And to your point, 18 of the last 25 for the Maple Leafs against the Eastern Conference. And important to stress, it's probably a 7-point gap because Boston has that tiebreaker as well. But I wanted to ask you, who's the most catchable team? I'm under the impression somebody's going to falter here late, whether it's Pittsburgh or the Islanders or Boston or Buffalo or Montreal. Who do you think is the most catchable team if you're the Maple Leafs?
I think a lot of these teams have been, fairly consistent, right? So again, I was going to say probably about a month and a half ago, maybe Detroit, just based on what I saw against them playing against the Leafs in the preseason. I thought they had some warts, but they've ironed out a lot of those warts, right? So for me, I'm like, is Buffalo going to come down to earth eventually? They're going to play 750 hockey the rest of the way? No. But again, as a player, and you heard Matthew Nye say it last week where he's like, I haven't even checked the standings. I believe it. As a player. You can't sit there and do the math. And I'm sure over a couple cocktails over the break, they're going to be like, it's going to be a little bit tough. But you can't focus on, hey, we need to win 8 out of the next 9, or we got to win 5 out of the next 6. You just got to take it game by game. So someone's got to fall down to earth. Is it Montreal, right? You see them now, goaltending struggling a little bit. Dobish was in the net the other night. He let in 4 in overtime against Minnesota. It wasn't some great goals. So is it Montreal? Is it Buffalo? I'm not too sure. But if I'm Toronto, I can't just be focusing on the who. You got to focus on the what.
And Stewie, as a former player, like people laughed at Matthew Nye's like 28 games left, and he says, I don't know what we believe in this group, and we're going. Everyone laughed in their face. I was kind of shocked. Like, there's a lot of hockey left to play. Wild shit happens. I mean, it wasn't even that long ago the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup after being dead last in the National Hockey League in mid-January. Like, much wilder shit has happened. As a former player, do you kind of get where he was coming from? And now that you're on the media side, do you have that push and pull? Because I'm feeling like, geez, people sure call her quits early in the media, and I get why. But when you're on that team, you're not thinking that. You're thinking, fuck, we just got to put her together. We just got to go on a run. We're going to get our luck. It's going to happen. And you're probably the last one to give up when you're a player, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? And you look at the media, and ultimately, the players and this job is sort of paying their bills. So I think there needs to be a little bit more of a natural respect for the players as, they're going out and doing their best. And, I sit up there in the press box and they're waiting to write whatever they can negatively about the group. But ultimately, you got to perform and do your job. But, I remember sitting in the Southeast Division, and Rosie, you remember the Florida Panthers back in the day, and the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Atlanta Trashers. We were bad. We were bad. And I remember a reporter coming up to us like, hey, did you know you didn't score in the last 20 games? I'm like, well, I didn't until you reminded me just now. Thank you. So you don't really look at the grand scheme of things. You really have to focus. And what people don't understand is the common fan is, hockey and professional sports is the only job that you get told how bad of a job you're doing every single day, and you can't quit. You don't get fired. You just have to deal with it. So if you had to worry about every single little detail, the media, the standings, the coach, I'm in the press box, family, you literally would go crazy. So you have to sort of compartmentalize all those little details and all those little thoughts that creep into your head. And when a player sits there, and we want the players to be less vanilla, but when he sits there and said, well, I don't check the standings, you can't, roast him for that, because he's definitely telling the truth.
I think there's different types of players to that point, because Troy Stetcher that very same night, and I know because I was there in Calgary, talked about the standings and broke them down and talked about how there was like 18 to 25 games remaining against the Eastern Conference. And conversely, Joseph Wall as well, talking about it the other day, how he doesn't look at the standings. So I think there's different types of players. What are you expecting deadline-wise? Like, we didn't see a move prior to the Olympic trade freeze. We didn't expect one. But what do you think the game plan should be for Brad Treliving leading up to March 6th?
I don't know. I'll tell you.
Good answer.
For play. Yeah. Next question. For management, what's the number one goal, right? You want to draft, develop, and win. And what is number two? Self-preservation, right? So I think he's just going to toe the line, make some minor adjustments. And I heard you guys earlier, you trade a Bobby McMann. Okay, well, that's just the conveyor belt of guys going from under $3 million, and when it's time to make $5 million, it's see you later, right? The Trevor Moores, the Mikheyev, the Zach Hymans. And you look at this roster, what are you missing? You're missing that $5 million winger that can go up and down and put the puck in the net. So if I'm Treliving, I'm finding a way to sign Bobby McMann, not getting a first rounder. When's the last time a first rounder was on this roster? Think about that, right? Is it Liljegren or Sandin, who's off to different pastures as well? So for me, I think you find a way to sign McMann. I agree with, some auxiliary trades, potentially a Benoit, is it a Carlo? But I don't think they're swinging for the fences and making any big moves where they're tearing it down to the studs. Who coined that term? Someone came up with that 2 weeks ago.
I hate it.
Everyone's been saying it everywhere since. So ultimately, you get rid of the McMann. Okay, who's going to now step in and score you 20, 25? Is it Nick Robertson, who, finally after 3.5 years is finally getting an opportunity? Is it going to be the Cowboy, who's not even in the roster right now? Is it going to be a guy down in the farm? So where are you going to find those 20 goals? And is it going to be in free agency? I don't know. You made some moves this past season that haven't necessarily worked out. So if I'm Toronto, toe the line a little bit. You try to add a D maybe potentially, but I don't see their tearing down to the studs. I don't agree with that.
So you want to hold on to Bobby McMann, and is there anyone that you would move on from, or how could this team, with the fever of their fan base right now after this season, go ahead with basically the same team? Are they just going to hang it on, we had some injuries and our goalies didn't play good? I don't know if that's going to cut the cheese for anybody who follows this team.
Well, you take a look, you blame it on the league, right? Is the Florida Panthers tearing it down to the studs, right? They have injuries, right? They're back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. So where's the pressure on them to make the playoffs, right? And yes, they're missing Barkov. Kachuk's been gone majority of the time too. Look at New Jersey. Look at the New York Rangers. And these teams were sort of ahead of the curve of what Toronto was. And they're not talking about blowing it up. Yes, they're talking about potentially trading some guys and firing some coaches, but you trade a big piece here, that's going to cause a frenzy. That's going to cause a frenzy for sure. So I think it's that self-preservation where I don't think they're going to do it. But, for me, I'm like, okay, Carlo can get you something down the line, but you get rid of him. Who's going to step in? Is it a Domi? What's the value there? So I understand from the value perspective, yes, you're going to get a first rounder, but some of these guys might not be here to make those picks in a year or two anyway. So I think for them, in their mind, they're going to say, hey, you know what? We might punt it this year. We're going to go for a run. And, we'll punt these picks and maybe try to turn it into something next year and potentially, make a move and get back into the playoffs. This year has been it's an anomaly, right? It's topsy-turvy. Who thought Buffalo would be where they are? Tampa Bay, Florida near the bottom, right? New York Rangers. And you can always say, well, if we were in the West, we'd be in second place. So I think there's some excuses where you can lay your hat on that. But Ultimately, I don't think the team has played good enough to this point to make the playoffs. So again, there's going to be some changes, but I can see it. Those big moves, if they do it, it's going to be in the off season.
Stu, my response to that is for what? You've won 2 playoff series in the last decade. You haven't even sniffed Lord Stanley. You barely sniffed the third round. You didn't get there. You lost in 5 and 7 last year to the Florida Panthers. So for what? You're going to come back and try to make the playoffs. Do they really think up there they think they're like they make the playoffs, they're going to win a Stanley Cup? Like, are we just trying to get to the playoffs?
So what do you do? You trade a Nylander?
I would.
You got to do something big.
I'd
right?
be open to everything. If somebody
Right.
called me right now and said, "Hey, we want to talk Matthews," let's do it. Nylander, let's do it. 10 years is enough time for me, at least, to say, "Hey, it's time to make a big time move." That's it. Right. It starts with Riley.
Look at
too.
Florida. Where is Florida where they are? They came in and they were calculated, whether it's the analytic critics or something, they were calculated on the guys that they brought in, the Mikolas, the Forslings, the Rodriguezes, staying on Bob. Bob was awful before they got rid of, where they were contemplating getting rid of him. And he came in and played some good hockey. That roster was built through free agency. Right, they got some guys that came in that were the misfits of elsewhere and came in and ultimately won this team the Stanley Cup. So I think for them, be calculated. If you're going to come in and bring a guy in for $1.5 million or $2.5, $3 million, you got to know exactly what you're going to get. So I think that's sort of where the missteps were the last couple of years, just bringing in guys for the sake of doing it. Hey, we're going to get rid of Simmons, but we're going to bring in Reeves, and just bringing in guys for the sake of doing it. You got to be calculated on exactly what you're going to do. So I know that's probably the clip you guys are going to use for socials, but that's neither here nor there. But you break it down to rebuild around superstars. You have 2 or 3 of those guys already. I think you've got to build around it, but you got to be better with the guys that you bring in. But I'll tell you this, the $1 million guys, the $2 million guys aren't going to be the guys that do the job. You need $4 to $7 million guys, the guys that get you through the playoffs, the guys that play that heavy style hockey, and you know exactly what you're going to get. It's tough to get them in free agency, so you got to make a cold and calculated trade, and you got to sacrifice one of the middle guns, not the big guns, to do it. That's my opinion on it. Maybe it's a goalie.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you could argue with Florida too. I mean, they had a 120-point guy in Huberdeau and said, "I don't like the cut of his jib. I don't think we're going to win with him." And they make a drastic move. Obviously, getting to Chuck's a big deal, but and doesn't come around all the time. But sometimes you feel like, yeah, we got a really talented player, but we don't believe in him. And I think to Nick's point, 10 years is like who are they going to surround these 2 guys with that's going to change anything? They've had. On to the other stuff here. If the Leafs,
can I tell you this? Can I just interject quickly? And I said this one time on one of the big networks, and I'm not going to say which one it was, but I said, does it even matter if they win? Does it change the bottom line whether they win or not? Right? The fans are still going to be there. The seats are still going to be packed with the suits, and until that changes, it's the status quo. Right? Does this team budget for 3 rounds of playoffs, or do they budget for 1 round of playoffs when they're doing their internal budget? So for me, I'm like the cog of the wheel, or the machine that is the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think it's hinged on winning Stanley Cups, where you have certain markets where that is what the owner is. We're going to spare 0 expense. We're not here to sell jerseys. We're here to do all these little things. So again, that's the most I'll speak on it, because I've already got reprimanded. But again, we can speak freely here, so I just wanted to mention that. Does it matter? Is it anything going to change? Right? We're sitting here discussing it, and that's generating revenue for the machine. So again, that's my conspiracy theory for the day. But sorry to interrupt you there, Rosie.
No, I hear you. It's fun to talk about. I mean, and what a perfect spot to be for a guy to say, "Hey, our bills are covered. The money's coming in no matter what happens. People are still going to fill the building and buy the jerseys. We're all good. Now let's try to do the fun part." And that's become a fucking hero and a legend and be the guy that built the team that finally got Toronto a Stanley Cup. Hey, I don't have to worry about not covering the costs of this thing. This thing prints money no matter how good or how bad they are. So now let's go do the fun part and build a hockey team and try to be the one group that does the thing that Toronto wants so badly, who no one's been able to do. It blows my mind to think that they're like, it doesn't matter. Like, what a great opportunity to worry about the stuff that's fun. Nonetheless, speaking of all those guys, if they do miss the playoffs, and let's be honest, the percentage chance of them missing the playoffs is higher than of them making it. Whose head's going to roll for that, and what changes are going to be made, if any, as far as general manager, head coach, those kind of things?
Never advocating for anybody, losing their jobs, right? But you're seeing sort of some of these other teams now get the dead cat bounce, right? Look at the Buffalo Sabres, right? They didn't change, any pieces. They made a change at the GM position. You're looking at Columbus right now getting back into the picture and bringing in Rick Bowness. So ultimately, we're in a professional sports results-based business, and there's probably going to be some changes. So again, I'm not sure what their internal budgets are. Are they, worried about saving money and, they're going to keep somebody? But there is change when, you don't win. And I was in the Southeast Division. I didn't win crap. I didn't win nothing. And every year there was 4 or 5 guys out the door. When I was in Florida, I think there was 4 or 5 coaches, Jacques Martin, DeBoer, Mike Keenan, and 2 or 3 GMs. And it wasn't, oh my gosh, that was par for the course. So there is change. So ultimately with these expectations, again, are they making the choice? We struggled this year because it's an anomaly, the injuries, the league's turned upside down. Do we run it back? But I've been doing media now for 5 years? We've been running it back for how many years? And I'm like, man. So again, I'm almost indifferent to it because I'm just like, now that I'm on this side of it, I'm more of a Toronto sports fan, and I'm just like, I don't want to get caught up in the fever of it. If it's me and I'm, in charge, you got to make some changes, and I think it starts with the top. And again, not advocating, but in pro sports, that's the business, and you got to make some moves because ultimately the construction of this roster is just not getting it done this year.
I'm blaming the players. 6 points out, 25 games left. Will the Maple Leafs make the Stanley Cup playoffs, Stewie?
I got the rosy sigh as I collect my thoughts. Yes, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. One of these teams are going to fall. I think there's going to be, maybe 1 or 2 key guys injured at the Olympics. Obviously not on the Canada side. And I think some teams are really going to, come back, sleeping, right? And, you're looking at some of these younger guys, Toronto with Matthew Knies, Robertson, Easton Cowan. These guys are on the ice right now as we speak. Yes, they're going to go to Cabo, have their couple of root beers, but they're going to come in and not having too many Olympians. I think it's going to be that R&R is going to have them go on a bit of a run. So I think, yes, I think it's going to come down to the wire. And if they miss out, it's going to be on 1 or 2 points because it's going to give everyone the hope that next year's our year.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.